Alright, we're moving on. We're moving on from the main event of UFC 267 onto everything else that happened on the card. You're still listening to TENGRIDOME. This is episode 26. I said it was episode 27 on the previous episode. I should really stop trying to count these things because I'm way past the 20-minute, threshold. I distinctly remember reading something about podcasts not surviving. If a podcast doesn't survive until the 20 episode threshold, then it's not going to continue. That's what I've read, and it kind of like stuck in my brain, and so I kept sort of counting each episode, like making sure. uh, anyway, this is TENGRIDOME episode 26 part 2, and we are gonna continue breaking down the card that happened last weekend. And as I've said, it was pretty good. It was a pretty dynamic, pretty interesting card, but nonetheless, everything that was on the card kind of suffered, from being featured on that same night when Petr Yan hosted, when Petr Yan turned in an MMA striking performance of the decade, essentially. But either way, aside from one outrageous instance of downright criminal officiating, it had great momentum, dramatic finishes, and all-round great fights that deserve an in-depth look. Maybe not as in-depth as Yan vs. Sandhagen, but still, there's some stuff that bears mentioning. So, the actual main event on paper was Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz. And what do I have to say about this one? I suppose it was certainly a feel-good moment for Glover, and kind of a feel-bad moment for Jan, obviously. And everyone was pretty high on Jan after so many ups and downs, so many struggles, and Blachowicz was able to endear himself to many an MMA fan for his perseverance, if nothing else. But, I mean, push comes to shove, at the end of the day, light heavyweight division is not at all relevant in the grand scheme of things. I know I'm not trying to piss on anyone's parade, not trying to ruin anyone's enjoyment of Glover's achievement, but the truth of the matter is that light heavyweight for the longest time, for the past, for much of the 2010s, I suppose, was, how did it look? It was basically John Jones, DC, and everyone else. And so now that John Jones is too busy trying to get his life together, or rather, trying to maintain the precise balance in his life, he can't merely live his life, he has to it's kind of like this thing that he does whenever he gets drunk or parties before fights, and so that he always has an excuse whenever something bad happens, or whenever he turns in a subpar performance, oh, I was drunk, oh, I was partying, that kind of stuff. And so when he grows old and someone asks him, how come you're not as successful as you could possibly be, and you would always have the excuse, oh, I've done some bad shit in my life. It's kind of like this balancing act of acting like a shithead to make sure he's not a completely 100% normal human being, because that would be boring, obviously. And DC's moved on to become, I guess, DC's grooming himself to try and become the next UFC president or something. He's too preoccupied with that. He's too preoccupied with shilling for his teammates on commentary to, to do stuff that matters for the division or the sport. And I mean, well, he's also very old, so... So yeah, basically what we're seeing here, so now that DC and Jones are gone, we're seeing everyone else take the spot. And everyone else is simply not as good. I'm sorry, but that's true. That's the long and short of it. Nonetheless, as much like the thing is, people always talk about how the game passes on, the game evolves, the game changes. Not at heavier weights, it doesn't. I've spoken about this on one of the previous episodes where I talked about the further versus the current crop of heavyweights type comparisons, and where I said that if you look back and watch some of the fights that happened way back when, the skill level is still pretty much the same, if not better in certain aspects. And this one is kind of like one of those cases. Glover Teixeira has been around for ages. And obviously, yeah, Blachowicz is also not a spring chicken, but however, Glover Teixeira kind of like both looks and I think has more mileage than Yan does. If only by virtue of his style being predicated on surviving horrendous knockdowns in order to go on and win the fight, to kind of like dupe his opponents into a false sense of security and make sure they follow him up to the ground to try and finish him, where he kind of turns the tables on them. Wasn't the case in this fight, which mildly impressed me. Well, I shouldn't be so negative. It actually did impress me. Glover Teixeira was able to take Jan Blachowicz' punches very well. He actually checked calf kicks, which was also a neat little look. Don't see that often, even at lower weight classes, although the tables are kind of turning in that respect. People are starting to catch on, because Jose Aldo, I guess, created the blueprint way back in 2010, I think. Like maybe a bit later, 2012, whatever. So, in what was one of the finer showcases of old man strength, Glover Teixeira grabbed a hold of Jan Blachowicz and kind of like beasted him to the ground, lifted him high up in the air, and then slammed him on the ground, and then spent the rest of the first round like that, kind of like, just wearing on Jan, I suppose. And afterwards, second round, wobbled Jan with a 2-3 combination. One where he actually changed levels, threw a right straight to the body, and then followed with a left hand, with a left hook to the head, to the jaw, which caught Jan very off guard, I must say. He kind of like, he reacted as if doing that is prohibited at light heavyweight. And if you look at the history of every fight at light heavyweight, most fights at light heavyweight, your average fight at light heavyweight, you would realize that might be actually the case. So I suppose, in a sense, Glover Teixeira broke the meta. Anyway, Jan was wobbled. Glover Teixeira dragged Jan to the ground and tapped him immediately with a choke. Well, still an impressive achievement, especially at Glover's age. Especially when everyone interested in the fights kind of expected Glover to do his usual thing of getting dropped, and not everyone was sure whether or not he will be able to survive getting dropped by Jan, but here he is. Not dropped, not even once. One might even say that he dominated the fight. Good on Glover. I suppose Yuri Prohaska is next. Next in line, the next contender. I'm not sure. Not sure about that one. I cannot. As much as I wouldn't like seeing Glover, as much as I wouldn't enjoy seeing Yuri play the bongos on Glover's big bald head, I suppose Yuri is exactly the type of opponent where Glover might actually survive and perform another one of his Aspel victories. But who knows? I'm not very invested. Good on Glover, good on everyone who enjoyed the fight, and I suppose Jan will be back. Doesn't strike me as the type of person who just simply falls apart after losses. certainly has had his fair share of embarrassing L's, taking embarrassing L's from time to time. So nothing new really on that front. And then I already talked about this one. Yeah, this is something. Yeah, Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. I would admit, first of all, is that Islam Makhachev is an elite lightweight, absolutely an elite lightweight, no denying that. If you deny that, you must, just pick another sport to watch, or maybe watch some more fights, kind of like reevaluate your choices in life. But however, if you get top gamed by Dustin Poirier, I'm sorry, but I don't think you will offer much to Islam Makhachev, like much at all, like anything really. Dan Hooker made the rather questionable decision of trying to kick with Islam Makhachev, despite being this being open stance and Makhachev being very good at catching kicks and taking people down off kicks. So naturally, Dan Hooker went to the ground, and then Makhachev secured the Kimura and submitted Dan Hooker very quickly. And the thing that got much publicity was the instruction that Khabib gave to Makhachev. And everyone was like, "Oh, Khabib, the genius, the grappling genius. Khabib invented grappling," when he instructed Makhachev to use his legs to finish the Kimura. And the thing is, as good as that finish is, it's still a very good finish. Don't get me wrong. That's literally how you should finish a Kimura if you are to have any hope of submitting anyone at the elite level. You know, I think the problem is that MMA fans are so used to seeing fighters crank on that Kimura for no good reason with all their strength to no avail, when the actual finish involves using your legs to create, counterweights, counterbalances, I guess. You get the idea. You kind of use your legs to create leverage, and then you finish the submission. When I pointed this out, it's funny. When I pointed this out, I got retweeted by a Catch Wrestling account, and the Catch Wrestling account was like, but that's not how you finish a double wrist lock. And I was like, well, enjoy not getting the submission then. I don't know, man. Catch Wrestling is cool, but Catch Wrestling fanboys are very strange. Let's leave it at that. Regardless, Islam Makhachev climbs the stairs, climbs the rankings, and DC shield very hard from Makhachev. I don't know. I've said that. I've said on the previous episode that you're gonna hear a lot of weird, jumping back and forth between the Russian pronunciation and the English pronunciation in these podcasts, because it's sometimes easier for me to keep up the flow of my spoken English if I anglicize the names. That is, mangle them. Anyway, I digress. DC was like, "Oh, Makhachev should get the title shot before Bjj," and which naturally pissed Bjj. Something fearsome. Something fearsome. How are you supposed to say it? And to which DC backpedaled very quickly, and it was like, bro, I'm just kidding, bro. Come on, bro. We're friends, bro. You're my favorite fighter, bro. DC. In the words of the now retired Danny Martin, Daniel Cormier is a cockroach. I can't actually, I'm very bad at imitating American accents, but the way Danny says that with his bass boosted voice, can't really imitate that. DC is a cockroach. Alright, moving on. Let's keep up the momentum. And speaking of momentum, Next up is Alexander Volkov. Alexander Volkov versus Marcin Tybura. I think that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Hang on, I'm gonna Google it. Yeah, Marcin Tybura. In Polish. To be quite honest, I zoned out. I zoned out very hard. I took this fight as an opportunity to take a bit of a coffee break. Talk to my girlfriend who was with me watching the fights. She very much enjoyed the card. Actually, it was kind of surprising. Very funny hearing her. It was very funny hearing her yelp every time someone got decked. But otherwise, the card was good enough that even she, not an MMA fan or a combat sports fan in any capacity, very much enjoyed what was happening. Maybe it just means that she's as much of a degenerate as I am. But I've said during my live tweet commentary that me roping her into watching this fight should be liable. Should be. She should be able to sue me for domestic abuse for roping her into watching this fight. Yeah, I don't know. I don't care about this one. Let's just move forward. Move ahead. This is the UFC just slotting in bad heavyweights in the middle of the main card to kind of I don't know, deliberately slow down the momentum of the already actually sincerely, genuinely good card. It's bizarre, but I'm used to it. Hamza Chimaev versus Li Jiangyang. Jiangyang. Hamza Chimaev versus Li Jiangliang. I think I pronounced it correctly. Hang on. Gonna Google this name as well. I'm gonna do the John Anik thing now. I'm gonna apologize for butchering names and kind of do my best to pronounce them as they should be pronounced. Hang on. Give me a moment here. Li Jingliang. Nah, that sounds racist. No, I won't do that. Okay, Hamza Chimaev versus the Leech. Okay, Hamza Chimaev versus the Leech. Impressive performance as always from Chimaev. The Leech, not much of a grappler. Him being announced as a BJJ black belt is kind of comical, considering that he got out grappled by pretty much any welterweight worth his salt who knows how to grapple. However, what struck out to me was how heavy Hamza Chimaev's hips are. That it looks like they're made of lead. He always maintains positioning, the good positioning with the hips, always maintains a lower center of gravity than the other guy, and so the other guy feels like it must feel like you're carrying two Chimaevs on your back as opposed to one Chimaev, which is already enough to kind of shit your pants if you don't know how to wrestle or grapple well. Anyway, Hamzat kind of shows off, which showboats a little by talking to some of the officials sitting cage side while lifting the Leech up in the air, dumps him down, kind of wears on him, and then submits him. The Leech has done a valiant effort of kind of trying to tough the choke out, but then all that ended up doing is that he went to sleep, basically. Way better win than some of the previous wins of Chimaev's. Nice to see Chimaev, I suppose, holding up well after his reportedly very nasty bout with COVID. Looking forward to him seeing him compete against better opposition. Still, I'm still choosing to remain fairly conservative when it comes to evaluating Chimaev. But I admit the guy is very good. He may prove to be a real force in the division. It's just that we haven't seen the best of him yet. Let's leave it at that. Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Ozdemir. Ankalaev, for all his discipline, for all his skill, I'm sorry, but Ankalaev is pathologically okay. I think that's the best way to put it. Ankalaev is entirely too willing to continue racking up sort of like uninspired but nonetheless comprehensive wins. That's how I would put it. And Volkan threw a bunch of like loopy hooks which didn't connect and kind of went like, oh, I guess there's no sense trying to win now. And Ankalaev had no issue counter double attacking Ozdemir to a comprehensive decision. Here's hoping Ankalaev grows in terms of skill and actually showcases some urgency moving forward. It's kind of like it's kind of similar to what Gun does. Gun pot shots and racks up a lead, but then never really proceeds to get his guy out of there. I know that Gun was able to, like kind of finish Derek Lewis, but it was more Derek Lewis kind of giving up rather than Gun truly building on any of his offense to set up a power shot. That's what I mean. And then Ankalaev was kind of like content with countering Volkan's very ugly, very telegraphed swings. And that's how he won. Decent win, still not very inspiring. Amanda Ribas versus Verna Jandiroba. I don't know, Portuguese names, Brazilian names. I'm not gonna try anymore. I'm sorry, I give up. Jandiroba, sadly, not quite the athlete to deal with Ribas's process. It was more of a contrasting, matchup where Ribas was the bigger athlete and I suppose a bit of a less natural fighter. However, she actually has a process, and so she was able to systematically pick Jandiroba apart. One thing I must point out is that I know that Ribas's nickname is Caracal. I think that's what it is. Hang on. It's come on. Topology. Don't let me down. Cacaral. Caracal is the name of the cat. Fuck's sake. Oh wait, is it? Or is it? I'm sorry, I'm currently googling Brazilian birds of prey. Brazilian birds of prey. Trying to find the actual, animal. Harpy eagle. No. That's not it. I think it was cacara or something like that. John Anik was talking about this on the commentary. DC actually asked him and derailed the commentary for like half the fight. And again, not much was happening during that, but still, it was still one of those things where DC just starts podcasting instead of commentating. Anyway, I think it was Kakara. Anyway, the reason why I'm pointing this out is that Ribas has this very annoying habit of flaring her elbows and kind of like doing the bird's wings kind of like gesture with her arms, and it doesn't have the right to annoy me as much as it does. I don't know, it's some kind of irrational thing where every time she did that I was like begging Jandiroba to basically kick Ribas in the ribs. Very annoying. Anyway, I suppose still decent enough win. Actually not that bad of a fight as far as women's MMA goes. So good on Amanda, I suppose. Welcome to TENGRIDOME ASMR edition. There was this time when I was looking for some stuff to listen to before I go to sleep. And one of my recommendations was mouth sounds. Binaural ASMR mouth sounds. 3 hours. And I was like, that's very clever of you, YouTube algorithm. You wish me to fly into a murderous rage so I exhaust myself and then fall asleep. Very smart. Come to think of it, he was kind of also looks like a bird. I think it's the nose and the googly eyes. Anyway, Zubayrat Tuhugov versus Ricardo Hamush. Zuba finally looking violent. It was actually a really, really good action fight. I really enjoyed that one. Zuba came out looking to pressure and counterpunch aggressively. He came out as an aggressive counterpuncher. It made for a really fun fight because Hamush was kind of like... I mean, first of all, Zuba got Hamush chasing bees every time he feinted. So, that's how potent Zuba's counterpunching looked in this fight. And again, Hamush really didn't offer much in the way of effective counter offense to Zuba's counters. It was all first layer counters mostly. Zuba would kind of feint and make Hamush jump, and Hamush would throw a strike, and then Zuba would counter over the top. Not much in the way of body punching or body kicking, not much in the way of kicking at all. But still, an impressive performance nonetheless. Hamush was able to nail Zuba with one of his meme elbows, the spinning elbow. That's one of the reasons is that Zuba kind of has a nasty habit of leading with his face whenever he throws. Or he would throw and then lunge forward following the strike, and which increases the time during which he needs to move his head back. Or messes with his balance, that kind of stuff. But still, Zuba was still able to dominate Hamush despite that, because Hamush does not know how to throw follow-up strikes. It was some of the worst strike selection I've ever seen. I have to say, the way he was followed Genghis after hurting her was also some of the worst follow-up striking I've ever seen. Just bunch of spinning shit and shitty bicycle kicks. Just throw 1-2s. It's fine. It will more often than not, simple 1-2s will connect because your opponent is hurt. They don't know what they are. Just throw 1-2s, please. Both fights pretty decent nonetheless. Now that I'm in the mood to unfairly make fun of someone's appearance, something they have no control over, Zuba is built very weird. It kind of distracted me for the first round at least. I was very distracted by his build, which is a short, stumpy, chubby legs, kind of looking like a toddler in there. From his entire bottom half looks like that of a toddler's, and the upper half, which is this long torso with short arms, followed with a long neck and a huge head. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm just trying to point out how weird that build is. You don't see people with that kind of build very often. I think the only one I've seen with that kind of build was the big baby guy. What was his name? The heavyweight. Junior Albini, I think his name was. I think the guy on Joe Rogan, and this is a very unfair comparison, I'm just remembering him. There was this guy on Joe Rogan who went on Joe Rogan and talked about how black people have a gene that makes them innately more aggressive, and he had the same type of build, the same big baby build. And I joke that, like, how come people who advocate for eugenics always look like they're supposed to be weeded out by eugenics? like, like, oh, did you know? Did you hear that the Spartans used to throw babies off a cliff? And the guy saying that looks like they should have been thrown by the Spartans off a cliff as a baby. uh, Next up, Albert Duraev versus Roman Kopylov. Roman Kopylov, man, find another camp, move, learn to wrestle, please. Just absolutely non-existent on the bottom. It's shocking. And I talked about on the previous episode how I noticed that American camps more often than not seem to be preoccupied more with motivating their fighters rather than actually giving them instructions. And I would like to rectify that a bit, kind of like a small correction. Kopylov's camp, it's both like American camps that are still very good, but kind of like the corner work needs some work, and it's an overlap between those camps and also camps that are just simply not high level, and it's not a connection you might want to have, because low level camps often do not give tactical instructions either. And Kopylov's corner was all like embrace the grind set, your mom's watching, your dad's watching, don't disappoint your parents, that kind of stuff. Like throughout each round, because they've had nothing to offer to him in terms of tactical advice. Kopylov kind of like basically toughed it out, which I suppose means he fulfilled the corner advice, but nah. Duraev, meanwhile, fairly hittable. I suppose he just doesn't. He looked very hittable against Southpaw. It didn't look like he knew what to do with the Southpaw. And it led to a very violent fight where Duraev's orbital, I think, got broken, and Kopylov's nose got smashed to pieces on the ground. And Kopylov was trying to do the fucking Taito Iwasa thing of trying to punch back from under top mount, which is always a bad sign, which is a sign that the fighter does not know what to do from bottom, from that position. And I was yelling at the screen. I was screaming at the screen. Just to hip escape, push in the hips, use your legs. And his legs were just completely dead. He didn't know what to do with them. That's the first sign you should look for. If the guy is grappling on bottom and his legs are not moving, his legs are not like, it doesn't look like he knows what to do with his legs. That's that's a surefire sign of someone who doesn't know how to grapple. Anyway, pretty violent, pretty good fight. Duraev was still able to take that decision, which I'm not sure about. I don't know. He got dropped a couple times. Then again, he still mauled Kopylov on the ground, so close fight in that respect. But I guess Duraev is the rightful winner. I'm not actually disagreeing with the decision. I think Duraev absolutely won. It's just that according to criteria, no, I think knockdowns should score more. I don't know. I should consult with that. I had actually studied the rules in depth. And oh, for fuck's sake. I had so much fun talking about the rest of the card that I forgot that Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos versus Benoit Saint-Denis happened. What do you say? What can you say about this? Vyacheslav Kiselev, that was the name of the referee. Vyacheslav Kiselev, I sincerely hope. After watching the fight, I was sincerely hoping that someone would be waiting for him outside the venue with a pair of pliers and a blowtorch. That's how I felt about that kind of officiating. If that kind of shit happened on the regional scene over here, I guarantee that after the fight, there would be a gang, there would be a band, there would be a group. Gang and band have, some certain connotations. Certain connotations that I'm injecting deliberately. There would be a group of people. There would be some very large Burat Mongolian men waiting for you outside the venue. That's all I have to say about that kind of officiating. Well, I'm not being sincere. I have a lot to say about this sort of officiating. First of all, what is the screening process for referees in the UFC? Who picks the referees? I know that athletic commissions pick the referees in the US. I'm not so sure about Abu Dhabi. I'm not so sure about any event that takes place outside the US, and especially like under this Abu Dhabi umbrella at the Etihad Arena. Seems very shady. I haven't heard of this guy before. And Kaposa, on Twitter, because he watches every fight ever, has said that he saw this guy being featured on some of the regional Russian events. And his officiating was about as bad, even back then. And I saw clips of him doing like magician hands and posing for the camera and winking to the camera. Which begs the question of what does Vyacheslav Kiselev think the job entails? Does he think the referee is some kind of showman? Does he think that the referee should get as much screen time as the fighters, being the third man in the cage or in the ring? Because the way he was prancing around that cage, the way he was like strolling around that cage, not for 1 second assuming a good position to be able to interrupt the action, it just... There's so many layers of incompetence here. First layer of incompetence, the fact that this type of guy was hired to officiate a fight. The second layer of incompetence was the referee himself. The fact that he did not assume correct position, the fact that he did not utilize proper footwork to remain in position to observe both fighters from an advantageous angle. From a good angle where he can see everything happening. What do I mean by that? If you were to look at Jason Herzog on that card, he constantly positions himself in between the fighters. He sees both fighters. He's like, stands like 2 meters, maybe 1.5 meters at most, away from the fighters. He's not circling them from way outside. He's not circling them from 15 feet away while looking at the sky, checking his time, checking his watches, and checking his watch and like thinking about whether or not he left the stove on back at home. Trying to remember what was the name of that hot chick from Pussycat Girls, which he saw on MTV back when he was, 17. That's not what you do as a referee. You're there, first of all, to be invisible. That's another layer of failure here. You're not supposed to be visible as a referee. If you do your job right, no one fucking notices you. It's a thankless, very hard, unforgiving job where if you make a single mistake, everyone will single you out. That's why a properly done job by a referee is never noticeable. Don't notice it. You're not supposed to notice it. You're not supposed to prance around doing magician hands. But what was the actual failure, you ask, if you haven't seen the fight? Okay, so Zaleski dos Santos is a very experienced fighter, a very experienced action fighter, a huge banger. He knows how to scrap. He punches hard, he punches well, and Benoit Saint-Denis is a grappler who was making his debut in the organization. It was his debut. I'm not painting Benoit Saint-Denis as some kind of like tragic figure, or like a, you know, like an amateur without skill, or like an inexperienced babyface. No, he's not. He's a grown man. He was doing his best to stay in the fight. He was fighting decently well for someone with a not yet mature overall MMA game. Plus, on top of that, according to Baba of the Aboard du Ring podcast, Benoit Saint-Denis is not, a nice man by any stretch of imagination, and his fan base. It does not consist of very nice men. Mostly right-wing conservative nuts, but that's par for the course in MMA. What I'm taking issue with here, well, first of all, I'm not an insane savage. I'm not a crazy person. As bad as Benoit Saint-Denis may be, allegedly, I do not wish to see a murder happen in the cage. I do not wish to see a man get beaten to death on live television. And this is something that's happened in other combat sports before, especially in boxing with its long and storied history, as well as its long and storied history of corruption. And the fact that the overall meta of the sport, the rule set, leads to situations where fighters absorb a tremendous amount of volume of strikes. Like constant, prolonged brain trauma is what does people in boxing more often than not. This was prolonged, constant brain trauma from mid-round 2 onwards. Zaleski dos Santos gassed himself out, wailing on Benoit Saint-Denis, who did not know what the fuck was happening. He got the ever-loving mother of fuck beaten out of him. What did the referee do? He looked like he did not understand where he was and what was happening himself. He looked like he got clogged over the head with a. He looked like he got clanged over the head with a cast iron pot beforehand. I don't even think. At some point, I got the impression that he does not even understand a word of English. Benoit Saint-Denis gets poked in the eye with a mask of blood covering his face and says, "I can't fucking see. I can't see shit." What does Vyacheslav Kiselev do? The only thing that he did not call the doctor in. First of all, the fighter had to call his own foul, which also happened in the first round when Saint-Denis, I think, kicked dos Santos in the balls, and they both kind of like shook hands about it. Meanwhile, Kiselev was looking somewhere up in the sky, maybe imagining the shape of the clouds outside the venue. Under the scorching desert sun, in the beautiful, endless dunes, the sea of sand, wondering about poetry and that kind of shit, I don't know. And then, all that he did after Saint-Denis called the foul and said that he cannot see was ask him repeatedly, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you okay?" He did explicitly say that he is not okay, Kiselev. Slava, I should call him. Mudak, if we were to speak mutual shared language. And then he took a point of Zaleski dos Santos for an alleged low blow. What are we doing here? Like, what happened was, like, Dos Santos has already wailed on Saint Denis for like 1.5 rounds. Saint Denis barely being able to stand upright, using the cage to prop himself up. Dos Santos's knee barely scrapes the cup, and Kiselev barges in and very authoritatively takes a point. And at this point, I no longer understood what was happening. I just could not understand what I was seeing. I could not fathom it. The commentary booth was losing it at this point already. And the corner of Saint Denis was nowhere to be seen. As much as I would like to see, that dog cunt, that useless sack of dog cum, have a fire hose shoved up his ass and cranked up to full volume, there is also one other guilty party, and that's the corner. What are we doing here, man? You know, one of our Discord patrons, one of our subscribers, is a big basketball fan, and we constantly make fun of him for it, because it's kind of like a funny bit at this point. And we've talked about how annoying basketball fans are, because there's like 10 million young boys running around posting "not a sport" under any posts that feature any sport other than basketball. And yeah, that's annoying, but when you see that kind of shit happen, I mean, are they wrong? Is this really a sport at this point? Can you sincerely sit down, watch this fight, and call what we're seeing a sport? This subscriber talked about how he entered a basketball discourse and tried to talk about MMA for a bit. And one of the guys in there said that they cannot bring themselves to watch people bludgeoning each other half to death for shit pay. And you know what? That's entirely fair. If I never saw a minute of MMA in my life before and watched this, I don't think I would have. I don't think it would have registered as a sport in my brain. I think I've heard someone say that achievements in sports are manufactured. Like, the great historical moments in sport are manufactured for a lot of money and a lot of suffering. And with combat sports, and I think it's a bit different. Great historical moments are manufactured for a lot of suffering and little to no money. And that's at the elite level. Not at this level. Not on the prelims of a card happening somewhere in the United Arab Emirates, paid for by the oil sheikhs. The oil sheikhs. How are you supposed to pronounce it? I don't know. Featuring, like, the whole thing. Let's zoom out a little. I was raving about this card for a while now, and I guess in my euphoria at finally getting a good card, I kind of forgot how it looks from the outside. I forgot about how it looks from the outside. Let's zoom out a little. Let's look at this whole thing. The venue, United Arab Emirates, constantly engaging in sports washing, constantly covering up for all the human rights abuses by hosting big sporting events in their big arenas that they've built using slave labor, using imported slave labor, indentured servants from other countries that are being starved to death in those labor camps. they flew in a couple people with genetic disorders to kind of like parade them around like circus freaks. They let in a referee that, as far as I can see, has no real skill in refereeing, to watch to watch a man get beaten half to death within an inch of his life for their entertainment. I mean, does this look like a normal sport to you? What are we doing here? I always talk about how the one thing that always keeps me invested in the sport and keeps me going is seeing elite fighters compete at the elite level and overcome and solve problems and overcome adversity and showcase what the human spirit and the human body can do, truly like push the limits of what you think is possible. And this thing gives them a sense of fulfillment in life. Everyone craves fulfillment. Everyone wishes to be something in life. Everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to feel like they matter something. And if these people need to sacrifice some of a large portion of their health fighting each other for money to feel that way, then more power to them. People will always want to fight. People will always crave action to some degree. And people like this will always exist. And we should let them do that. And we should let them do that in a safe, controlled environment. We should limit the risks as much as possible so they can enjoy the job that they love so much. That's the least we can do for them, because they take all that inner turmoil, inner pain that everyone shares across the globe, that real human suffering, and they turn it into historical moments of triumph, historical moments of victory, and amazing. They achieve all these amazing things for our entertainment, and we cannot even create the conditions necessary for them to at least not fucking drop dead after showing up to work. This is their fucking job. And we're treating them like they're kids in the coal mines in the 19th century. What the fuck is this? All these stories about fighters coming from the favelas, coming from third world countries, coming from poverty, dragging their way out of poverty and into the spotlight and achieving great things in their life. And everyone flocks to all that stuff and kind of goes, oh yeah, poverty breeds champions. Struggle breeds champions. It creates character. While thousands and thousands and thousands of other people remain in that poverty and dirt and suffering and pain. A man got nearly killed. And I go, that was a good card. I go, that was a pretty good card. A man almost fucking died in there. And I'm like, shit happens. I guess at least there's other cool fights that are going to happen on that tourney, on that card, on that event. You know what's fucked up? Is that I'm still gonna tune in and watch this shit. Anyway. I guess what I'm trying to say is, we owe it to these people to minimize all possible risks while still letting them compete to the best of their ability. And that involves actually strictly monitoring and controlling what sort of officials the fight organizations hire. We should put the pressure on fight organizations to create some kind of positive change, you know. And I know there's half a dozen, already I can picture half a dozen fight fans scoffing, going nothing's gonna change. It's been this way for ages. Nothing's gonna change. And people say the same shit whenever you point out, oh, there's inequality in the world, or there's still people with no running water in some parts of the world, and everyone's like, yeah, that's been this way for ages. You're not gonna change anything by whining about it. So why even talk about it at all? I mean, that's precisely why it never fucking changes. No one fucking talks about it. Jesus Christ. How hard is it to wrap your brain around it? Wrap your brain around this simple fact. I would know if I can live in one of those third world countries. Oh, third world is harsh. I don't think second world actually makes sense because it was kind of like it's a term that was created during the Cold War, because like there was like the first world, there was the Soviet bloc, and there was everyone else, the little people who got wrapped up in all the political machinations and proxy wars and all that kind of shit. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure someone will correct me. Someone will pop up and like fact checked every single statement that I've just made. And DC was like, if Dana was here, the commentary, I think Paul Felder, as much as good as he was during that night, the commentary booth like collectively going, if only Dana was here, like Dana is not the caring father that everyone thinks he is. It's because of Dana this type of shit happens. It's because of people like Dana this type of shit continues to happen. And continues to never change. Anyway, I shouldn't say things like, I live in a third world country. There's people who have it way worse than me. And you always have to have this type of perspective in your mind. Unless you turn into one of those checkmarks who can complain about moving somewhere where Amazon Prime takes more than 4 hours to make their delivery. When I finished watching that, whatever that was, the fucking, I struggled to call it a fight. I was very tempted to turn the whole thing off, and what was also especially embarrassing is that I was watching the event with my girlfriend, who was so far enjoying what was happening, and I was like, a thought struck me. It's I think I expressed it earlier. I don't remember. I kind of I sort of blacked out when I was speaking. Like, what would a normal person think about this whole thing? About combat sports, about MMA. I would like to end this recap here, because honestly my mood was ruined. Much as it was ruined when I was watching the thing. Anyway, I guess the takeaway is that other sports have already dealt with deaths. Do we really need to see one in MMA to realize that it can be avoided? There have already been deaths in MMA, I must say. It just happened in smaller organizations with far greater reach than the UFC. And what especially pisses me off is that I have to restate, do we really need to push our luck this far to take any kind of action? Does this fan base care so little? Does it truly care so little about what happens to the people that go in there and sacrifice their health and the possibility for a long and healthy and happy life for their entertainment? Huh? Fucking hell. Yeah, I would like to wrap this up, but there's still some fights to go through, and it would be kind of like I would make a disservice to the guys that actually showed up and sacrificed some of their brain cells. Just like it would be hypocritical of me to kind of like let them go unmentioned to make my moralistic point or whatever, and to like create this dramatic podcast, the dramatic ending where I yell at the audience for being dickheads while still being a dickhead and watching a dickhead sport for dickheads without actually covering the rest of the card. Fuck it. Moving on. Mikhail Alexeychik versus Shamil Gamzatov. Mikhail Alexeychik, I guess you could call this a triumphant return to form. Cardio bullied the shit out of Gamzatov. Came out like a house on fire, and this is one of those funny outsider things. Like my girlfriend noticed that Gamzatov was way more muscular than Alexeychik, and I was like, oh no, how could they matchmake like this? How could they pit this sort of like normal looking dude against a beast like Gamzatov? And I go, you just watch. And Alexeychik did not disappoint. Absolutely melted Gamzatov, pressed him up against the cage right away from the opening seconds and never let up. Kept on punching and punching and punching, and then downed Gamzatov with a hellacious uppercut, which connected on the eye, which is one of the more gruesome things I've seen in the last several months. I'm sincerely hoping Gamzatov didn't receive any kind of lasting damage or like permanent damage. Hoping it's just an eyelid cut, or maybe like at worst a scratched cornea, because that thing you can recover from, and while still retaining the vast majority of your ability to see. If not, then just a point in the this is not a sport. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I guess this is another like strike against the sport of MMA, if that happens. Anyway, Leroy Murphy versus Makwan Mirkhani. I like Leroy. I really do. I really thoroughly enjoy him. I thoroughly enjoyed his effort against Zubayrat Khugov, and I personally think that he was robbed. It was a draw, but I think he won that fairly cleanly. It's just that Khugov was doing lots of top control, and I guess he won based on that criteria that shouldn't matter, because damage is what the primary scoring criteria. Anyway, Makwan Mirkhani, I don't know, man. I don't know. Makwan is pretty late into his career. Making adjustments to his style may just about ruin him as a fighter. But he wouldn't be able to hang in there with the elites with that kind of style. He pushes a pace that he cannot maintain, and his positional control is not that great. He's an enthusiastic grappler more than he is a good top control player. That's how I would put it. And he got lucky here, because Leroy Murphy is not exactly a good grappler either. Leroy did a good job of focusing on fighting the hands. However, he focused on fighting the hands so much that he forgot about everything else. And there was one really stupid moment where Makwan fucked up and ended up with Leroy on top of him. And he was lucky that Leroy did not have the grappling instincts to assume a correct top control position. He sort of sat on him like on a bench with his ass. And so Makwan was able to reverse the position from there, but still exhausted himself grappling. After the first round, he already looked like he was about to... he was already breathing hard and looking like not great. And then in the second round, Leroy made the adjustment and fainted the very telegraphed and bad, frankly quite bad shot from Makwan Amirkhani and kneed him in the face and knocked him dead. And this is one thing about those pressure grapplers that kind of too anxious on the feet. They shoot too eagerly and from too far out. And this is what happened to Makwan. Good for Leron, some encouraging things in there, some not so encouraging things in grappling, but I think he could be a solid top 15 type of action guy. Someone like Sadiq Yusuf. I would rather enjoy seeing him again. And then Andrei Petrovsky versus Hu Yaozong. That was disgusting. That was the sloppiest fucking fight I've ever seen. It was dog shit. I'm sorry, but it was. Petrovsky was, I guess, for as young as he is and as early into his career as he is, it's kind of like fine to look unsure of yourself, and they're both very, very early into their careers. But the thing is, Hu Yaozong is 3-3, and Andrei Petrovsky was 6-1 coming into this fight. Hu Yaozong was 3-2 coming into this fight, so not very experienced and not seemingly not very good either. Petrovsky, one of the slowest wrestlers I've ever seen, I have to say. I guess he burned his arms out trying to go for that guillotine and for other chokes, and so he couldn't throw strikes with any degree of urgency and quickness. Still horrendous. Slowest, most winding overhands I've ever seen, and Hu Yaozong was still getting pieced up by them. Hu Yaozong, meanwhile, man, that UFC Performance Institute in China, not very good. He was constantly gliding around that cage. It was kind of like, his entire style was kind of like unpleasant to watch. It was like someone trying to imitate. He looked like a 3-year-old trying to imitate what he saw in like an action film, and the action film itself wasn't that great either. He would constantly cross his feet. Whenever he moved forward, he would move his rear foot first, and then follow up with the lead foot, like the opposite of what you actually should do to maintain your stance. And then he exhausted himself and just got choked out. I suppose it's very funny from an entertainment perspective, kind of like a silly fight. Fine to have one way down there in the prelims. But man, these guys are just not talented. I'm sorry. And last one, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Alan Nascimento. I personally think that Alan Nascimento won that fight off his back. That decision was incorrect. Lots of fun scrambles. Nascimento was doing a really great job of attacking submissions, especially really great job of using the Kimura to sweep, interestingly enough. Nice theme we got going here. Lots of Kimura sweeps, lots of armbar attacks, a fun a leg scramble. There was a fun leg scramble sequence. Ben, I think, will do a much better job of explaining what happened. I wonder if he'll write a breakdown of that fight. I sincerely hope he does. But yeah, and the Nascimento was landing elbows from bottom, attacking submissions, while Tagir Ulanbekov was mostly like hanging out there in top control. And this is the problem. This is one of those problems about scoring fights like that. Judges look for who is on top more than they look for who is actually creating, actual offense. effective offense. Regardless, fun fight, really excellent start to the card, kind of set the mood for the rest of the thing. And yeah, you know what? Thinking about it, there used to be better cards than this. There were better cards than this. I think it's just that we saw so little of them that our standards have fallen a bit. I wonder if in retrospect, I wonder if I should be giving this card as much credit as I am giving right now, because I think what mostly made this card enjoyable for me was naturally the inclusion of Petr Yan versus Cory Sandhagen. I guess the Islam versus Hooker finish was fairly dynamic and interesting. Hamza finish interesting. The Seoul WMMA fight, okay. Mikhail versus Özdemir, boring, but okay. A bit on the boring side, however. Dokugov versus Hamosh, very entertaining. Duraev versus Kapilov, entertaining. Zaleski versus Antony could have been entertaining if not for that cunt. Fucking dog cunt Kiselev. Alexeichuk, Gamzatov, very entertaining. Murphy, Amirkhani. You know what? Still a good card. Aside from all the caveats that I've included prior to this. I've already fallen back into my MMA fan brain, where I'm ignoring all the shit that happened behind the scenes. I mean, that's the thing about combat sports. You can't really enjoy all this without compartmentalizing all this stuff that goes behind the scenes. Otherwise, you'll go insane. And I think, I mean, most sports are like sick management games for immensely wealthy people. I think the Sunshine Sparkle 69 said that, one of our subscribers that I was talking about, the guy who suddenly became way into ball sports, American ball sports to boot. Very embarrassing. But yeah, he kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, everything that we enjoy in this world comes with the caveat that your enjoyment comes at the price of someone somewhere out there in the world enduring some sort of suffering. It's kind of inevitable. There's no way to ethically consume anything in this world, really. It's just that whenever you consume combat sports, you kind of agree to I guess, sacrifice some of your moral scruples in the first place. It's already a morally ambiguous thing to be enjoying. I don't know. I guess I still ascribe to the idea that fighting is still in our blood as a race. The human race. Not the, I mean, if I were to be some kind of weirdo nationalist, I guess I could be running around spewing that the Mongols are a warrior race. I'm not gonna do that. That's cringe. It's just very cringy. We already got enough of those types of people running around, both in Buryatia and in Mongolia. I'm rambling already. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's that. I've managed to cover everything that I wanted to cover. The idea that there's no way to ethically consume anything and that you should just kind of like sit back, it doesn't sit well with me. Yes, there's no good way to consume anything ethically. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be outspoken about it. That doesn't mean you should demand positive change. Doesn't mean you should just sit down and kind of like give up on everything. And I see that a lot. With people who care who ostensibly care a lot about the issues that they talk about, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so burned out from the like hearing the news about wars and hearing the news about like ethnic cleansing and genocides. It's all so tiring. Nothing will ever change. The elites control the world." Well, boo-hoo. That's the world we live in. That's the world we live in. Fucking English vowels, man. It's such an annoying fucking language. I can't get. I seem to get the hang of the pronunciations, and then immediately I make some kind of like weird mistake that annoys me to no end. That's another one of those things, like fucking colonizers. I have to live in a world where everything is in English. Fuckers. I mean, basically, I think what I'm trying to say is that I think if you're, I'm talking about a very specific type of person, like a very active, avid poster on social media. It's not one singular person. I'm talking about a specific group of people who are very prominent on social media and like pundit in spheres of punditry and all that kind of stuff. People who always complain about the world and always like cry about the injustices, and then when push comes to shove, to like create some kind of actionable change, they sit back and do nothing because it's not ideologically pure or whatever. Like it's going to be co-opted by corporate conglomerates anyway because it's a political initiative. There's no way to change anything. The system is rigged. Well, these people are wankers. That's what I think. The thing about the world, you have to accept it as it is. Whining about it will change nothing. Pointing out the problems is the first step, but then you have to actually do something about it. I can't really do anything about my language dying in my region, I guess. My dialect of Mongolian dying in my region and my culture being suppressed by the Russians in Buryatia and like everything like dying out, everyone assimilating. But I guess the least I can do is to relearn all that kind of stuff and kind of learn my history and make sure I pass it on. And make sure I educate my nearest, closest circle of friends and all that stuff. It's small. Very likely will not change anything. But at least I guess it's my way of making sure I can sleep at night. I guess what I'm saying is the least you can do is not be a whiny fucking cunt. Get angry, for fuck's sake. Don't be all like, I can't be sports, it's so bad, and I can't bring myself to watch it. Fucking don't watch it then, okay. Don't go around like pissing your pants about it in my in comments to my posts and that kind of shit. I'm not even supporting the UFC financially because I pirate everything. Fuck giving them my money. Suck my dick. Come on. I think it's perfectly fine to live your life. Try to eke out a living in this unjust world. It's because 1% of the populace, of the human populace, like holds 99% of all resources and wealth. So the least we can do is just kind of consolidate the conditions to ensure that our lives don't suck complete dick. The game is rigged, people. Gonna have to tough it out. And if enough generations of us tough it out, before the planet dies, of course, then maybe something can be done. I may live in a totalitarian hellhole, but look at me. I've found ways to express myself still. I mean, at some point, I guess the FSB is gonna enact like the central, like the state Duma is gonna enact some kind of law that prohibits people from interacting with the rest of the world's internet because they're definitely working on that kind of stuff. They're working on the Great Russian Firewall, so I may be silenced through that by being being cut off from the rest of the world. But I mean, for now, I can do that, and I'm gonna enjoy it. And someone may review all the stuff that I've said here and they're gonna gulag me. And the plan is to not be here when that happens. And one way to do that is to support the fight site on Patreon. Now that's what I call a segue. Smooth transition, like smooth little babies, to quote Benny from Fallout New Vegas. Supporting the fight site on Patreon actually like directly affects my income, because this is my my full-time job now. I guess my second full-time job. Anyway, support the fight site, subscribe to our Patreon to listen to the alternate commentaries. Stay tuned for the alternate commentaries that we're gonna release after UFC 268. We're gonna release a full preview of UFC 268. Fenyo and Dan have already recorded a complete preview. They've studied the footage. They've studied every fighter on the card, every fight, every single bout. It's crazy. They're insane. Also very unethical, because they had to watch lots of tape from the UFC. Anyway, look forward to that. It's looks to be a pretty decent card as well. My boy Iggy, my boy, the violence idiot, Justin Gagey, is returning. Couldn't be happier. Finally, after a year. It's very weird how they marinated him. It's like he lost to the greatest lightweight who ever lived, and went like, "You're shit now. Sit down." And like Hunter Campbell morphed into Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks, and like, "I see you in 25 years." And and finally here he is, Justin. He's back. And what else? What did you do? Oh, we also released an instructional. I'm reminding you, we released a Bjj instructional that explains how you can finish guillotines from top mount and other positions. Many people will benefit from this. Novices, you will benefit from this. You will tap every white belt with it, every fellow white belt with it. Advanced students, if you ever felt like there's something little, there's tiny little detail missing from your choke submission game, there you have it. You can purchase it. You can make a one-off purchase for $60, or you can subscribe to our Patreon at the $50 tier, which also gives you the access to all the stuff that we've released, obviously, in the Discord, all that kind of stuff, where you can converse with staff members, with me, and other like-minded fans. It's a pretty active community, small but cozy, and fairly active. Also very supportive. Everyone gives training tips. Everyone explains stuff. Everyone like shares analysis, that kind of shit, that kind of stuff. Also, if you gain access to the instructional and download it, and then after you feel like you've got everything that you wanted, then I guess you can lower your tier simply to a more manageable sum of money. I would much prefer if you stayed at the $50 tier, of course. Obviously. What else? Did I forget to plug anything? No, I think that's that. There's gonna be an MMA podcast, obviously, about all the fights that happened. So stay tuned for the input of Ed Gallo and Thriam. And I think we'll have lots of interesting things to say about the wrestling exchanges. He knows substantially more than I do about wrestling. I know some stuff in an MMA context, but not as much as Ed, because he actually watches wrestling and actually wrestled and trains wrestling. So stay tuned for that. And hope I didn't bring anyone's spirits down too much. That's why, I mean, I am tough, but I am fair. I want everyone to have a fighting chance in this world, because everyone deserves one. And these things need to be pointed out. You cannot be constantly being positive doesn't mean you're enacting some kind of positive change, or you're making sure that things are going to work for the better, or like changing someone's outlook for the positive. You're just covering up all the nasty bits. It's like instead of fixing a hole in the wall, you're like covering it with like a sheet of paper, and you write there's no hole on the sheet of paper. Very tortured analogy, but you get what I mean. Some things need to be said. Some things need to be said more than once. And some things need to be restated to make sure you don't forget. This was as much for my benefit as it was for yours, I guess. That is, if you enjoyed it. Can't polish up a turd. That's all it is. That's all there is to it. Anyway, I guess that's enough of that. Should wrap this one up. Shouldn't overstay my welcome. You know that in Russian households, whenever a guest overstays their welcome, it's a very old concept. I don't think it's practiced now, but it used to be that if a guest overstayed their welcome, Russians would pour their guest, whenever they poured their guest a mug of tea, they would fill it to the brim with tea, like a shit ton of it. Basically like saying, like, come on, finish it up, fuck off. Fuck off already. Like, see this cup? There's too much tea. There's too much of you now in this room. In my house. Now go away, wanker. So, on that note, I'm fucking off. See you later. Cheers. I am tough, but I am fair. And I think what's fair, what would be fair is that Kiselev needs to be shot. Also, the corner of Saint-Denis should be locked up with ZDS in there for 5 minutes. That's what I think. Also, Dana is a fat, bald cunt.